right. Good afternoon. This is the February 8th meeting of the Design and Project Review Committee. We do have a quorum. Is there a suspension of the rules?
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules to allow member participation electronically or by telephone.
Second.
Thank you. Michael, please call the roll.
Neiden,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Callahan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hike,
Aye.
Pratt,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Griffith, aye. Motion carries.
Great, thank you. We will take the first item of business or minutes. I'm sorry, let's do minutes. January 25th, 2022 meeting minutes and the January 1st, 2020 meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve both together?
I'll make a motion that we approve both sets of minutes.
Second.
Michael Griffith, please call the roll.
Neiden,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Callahan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hike,
Aye.
Pratt,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Griffith, aye. Motion carries.
Okay, then a bit of housekeeping. I see that the applicant for 1801 Central Street is on here. But for others that are participating, we've pulled this from the agenda. We've reviewed something additional in the plans, and we're gonna move this to a future meeting. So I believe Mr. Hennessy staff will be in contact if they haven't already been. You're welcome to stay, but we're gonna hold this to a future meeting.
Understood. Yeah, we'll just listen in.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is, first up is 2356 Colfax Terrace, recommendation to the Land Use Commission. Sarah and Patrick Hillman, property owners, submit for major zoning relief from the Evanston zoning ordinance for additions to a single family residence in the R1 single family residential district. The applicant requests zoning relief for 32.7% building lot coverage where a maximum 30% is allowed. 54.5% impervious surface coverage where a maximum 45% is allowed. A 1.5 foot north interior side yard setback where 5 feet is required, and a 3.3 foot in north interior side yard setback where 4.5 feet is required for yard obstruction roof overhang. A 17.4 foot west rear yard setback where 30 feet is required, and a 10.5 foot west rear yard setback where 27 feet is required for a yard obstruction. Detached accessory structures in the front yard where detached accessory structures are only permitted inside and rear yards. Any a 2 foot north yard setback where 3 feet is required to any property line for detached accessory structures. A 1 foot north interior side yard setback where 2.5 feet is required for a yard obstruction on a detached accessory structure. Roof overhang, a 35 foot height for a detached accessory structure where a maximum 20 foot height is allowed for accessory structures that are not garages or ADUs. A fence in the front yard where fencing is not permitted within the front yard or within 3 feet of the front facade of the house, and a 7.3 fence height where a maximum fence height of 6 feet is allowed. The Land Use Commission is the final determining body for this case. The item was continued from last week's meeting. So any applicant, why don't you start giving a presentation of what you would like to do, and then we'll go with staff questions after and comments after that, and then members of the public from there.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Is it possible to allow me to share a quick screen really quick?
Sure, we can do that. Is this something different from what's in the packet?
Probably yes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, you should be able to share now.
Okay, thank you very much. 1 second. It's making me give approval. Sorry, folks. All right, sorry, I'm gonna have to restart my Chrome really quick. Apologies. There's always something wrong. Joe, do you want to start really quick with just an overview of the project while I pull this up?
Sure. So I guess what I can start with is to begin, it's important to acknowledge that the Evanston zoning code and all the work that all of you do is intended to improve a community's well-being. So we do appreciate all your work. We fully understand that just matching one's neighbors is not a good enough standard to improve the community's well-being. It's obviously not helpful to match negative or obsolete attributes in a community, so we don't want to do that. Nevertheless, today we're in the unfortunate position of needing to rely on matching our neighbors for two important reasons. We're only matching the positive attributes. Luckily enough, our neighbors have built out their properties in ways that contribute to community well-being. And so we seek to match many of those positive attributes. And secondly, we are matching the overall development patterns. We desire to increase the well-being. And one way to do that is to match the existing development patterns in the community. So returning to the value of Evanston's zoning ordinance, the law includes a means to comply with the zoning ordinance when one has a peculiar property and separately unusual yard situations. And we have both. And so therefore, not as a common practice, but today we do need to compare this property's perimeter with our neighbors. We think this will improve this. We think this will actually prove that by continuing many of the positive aspects in the community, we will increase the well-being of the community and further the goals of the zoning ordinance. So that's kind of, we are in this unfortunate position that we need to compare with the neighbors because we have an unusual situation. Many of you have seen this before. We presented this at a previous meeting. So I think you're familiar with the project, but as soon as Patrick, are you ready to go?
Yep, I just need to be let in through my other laptop because the SEC does not allow me to share my screen from this one, evidently. So here we go.
Recording progress.
Okay, now I can share my screen. Anyone hear me okay?
Sounds good from here.
I'll let this thing load. Again, my apologies. Should have known something would go wrong. Can you guys see it? I can't see you guys, so I'm going to assume you guys can.
Yes, I can.
So again, to Joe's point, I just want to thank everybody for this. I want to leave you here for a second because what you're looking at here is the longest property line that we have along our unit. As you'll see, this white fence is probably going to be talked about like quite a few times. That white fence has been there for around 40 or 50 years. That fence, Joe, I think sits 4 inches off our property line, correct? And has been sitting there for quite some time. And then in between that fence and the movable alley is this 2 to 3 foot berm that's been sitting there. So for our project, what's really important to kind of point out is we have this kind of weird scenario. We are actually on a Colfax Terrace, which is actually a privately owned street that's owned by the property owners. And at the end of that property is a cul-de-sac that goes primarily into our property. Now, even though that cul-de-sac is, technically owned by us, it's a really important attribute for my neighbors because it allows my neighbors to get in and out. And so when we bought this house, we bought it for a couple different reasons. We loved the neighborhood. It's really quiet and it's really interesting, and it has that sort of Midwest sort of modern kind of feel to it. And it has a lot of light and a lot of trees. And those were things we wanted to really keep. And so when we think about like what our objectives were, my wife and I are looking to, rebuild this 6-year-old house that's on this really atypical lot. And I'll explain that a little bit more, to house us and our kids. It's been vacant for almost a decade. And so we think our neighbors are gonna be really happy, like having a young family come in and building, a large addition that's going to, be with the sort of spirit of the neighborhood and allow for that continued light and airiness to exist. We're really looking to protect existing green space and trees because that's important. My wife and I, it's part of the reason why we loved it so much. And we really want to make sure that our neighbors to the south, that they continue to have all of that light and green and like airiness for their own sort of purposes. Another issue that we're going to talk about is, which you'll see, which is again really atypical, is at the end of that cul-de-sac, what you'll find is that there's a very large alley that both I and all of my neighbors look directly into. And so we're also hoping to be able to block off a little bit of that view to help increase just the quality of life, and also a little bit of a safety concern with my wife and I as we think about, do we really want to have our kids having that close of access to an alley? Despite the fact that it's very, very rarely used, there still is traffic as my neighbors pull in and out of their garage on occasion. So this is the site map as it sits today. The red sort of thick dotted line, that's where the current house sits today. And the sort of dark line around it, that's the home we're looking to build today, with that really thin red dotted line that you see at the top. That's where that existing fence line is. And that fence line goes along the alley, and then it goes out to the corner, and then it goes south along my western border. So why is this property peculiar? The property has like 4 key property lines, and while each property line isn't really unique individually, when you add all of them together, particularly the north, east, and west, it makes it really atypical. Along the north side, we have that really long sort of alley that runs alongside a number of ADUs. To the east, we have that private road, Colfax Terrace, which has that private little turnabout that goes into our property line. And then to the west, we have Poplar Avenue, which is really the only public right-of-way the house has access to, which is along the metro tracks. And then to the south, we have our neighbors. So the yards, because of the way they're set up, are also like really unusual. So this is where the kind of home sits in the neighborhood. We're at the end of a dead-end street, at the end of another dead-end street at Poplar, in a neighborhood that's essentially like one big dead end. And as you'll see, a lot of our neighbors, again, have moved up and built a little bit more closely to the alley in order to allow for that lightness in what is a pretty peculiar neighborhood layout. And so to the top left, you can kind of get a look at, here's what the sort of alley view looks like coming off of Poplar. And then in the bottom right there, what you'll see is that cul-de-sac view from our neighbors who look at our home and then directly at all of the garbage cans and the street lights of that alley. So here's where it gets weird from the yards. So if you look at the zoning analysis, when the zoning analysis looks at what our front and backyard is, they consider our front yard that green line, which is on Colfax Terrace, which is actually a private little driveway for us. And they view our backyard as essentially being on Poplar, which is our only access to a main thoroughfare. And then where our garbage cans and all of our neighbors' garbage cans, they consider that our side yard. And then obviously our side yard to the south of our neighbors. But if you think about the yards according to public road access, then really the only front yard you would technically have traditionally would be on Poplar Avenue. with our rear yard being where the garbage cans are, et cetera. And then the back and the side of our neighbors, that's actually really where you'd consider your side yards. And if we think about yards according to what current use actually is, you kind of have like this little weird sort of triangle at the front of the house near Colfax Terrace. That's really kind of our front yard, with our side yards running alongside the alley to the north, to our neighbors, and then our actual like rear yard is actually by that garage and where those garbage cans are. And so this is a really weird, atypical setup. And again, it's all sort of combined with this really weird sort of view of garbage cans and the alley, which, you know, nobody I think in the neighborhood really likes. And we'd love to find a way that we can put some green space there to kind of block that, to allow for, you know, just a little bit of a nicer, more pleasant open green space area. So first of all, I think it's really important. We are looking to comply with zoning ordinances. We understand how important it is to promote safety and general welfare. Securing adequate light and safety from dangers is critical for us. It's the reason why we're engaging in this. We want to make sure that we're, you know, conserving help to enhance the value of the neighborhood, and we want to make sure that we're limiting those setbacks. And we've spent a lot of time over the last 7 months since we started this process to make sure that we tested out a whole series of different types of layouts. And this was easily the one that both creates a good environment for our family, and most importantly, like protects and creates a nice environment for all of our neighbors as well. And so our specific requests are going to be to do some setbacks off the alley so that we can match neighboring ADUs and garages. We want to match the sort of step corners that our neighbors to the north and south have. And we want to be able to use our sort of front as almost like a side entrance, similar to our neighbors to the north. And when we think about why, you know, we're doing this and what we're asking for, we're looking to just rehabilitate this current vacant property. We want to increase comfort and light. And we're looking to seek some relief, which what we would argue is a pretty well-documented hardship given how peculiar this property is. And so we're looking for you folks to hopefully let us walk through, you know, 12 points that the zoning analysis has laid out that they see as variations. But I want to talk about what we're not going to be asking for. We're not going to ask for a lot coverage variation. We'll talk about that in a bit. We're not going to ask for an impervious area coverage variation either. We're not asking for any height variations, and we're not going to be asking for variations related to detached structures, which we'll talk about in a moment. So here are the 12 variations that were cited by zoning. Again, the top two we're not going to be requesting. We will touch on those, and we also will not be touching on the attached or detached height restriction on accessory structures. So with that, I've talked for way too long. I'm going to let Joe walk through the 12 right now and just kind of lay out where we are, and then let you guys get to questions.
So we'll try to go through them quickly, and we can come back if needed. But so this first idea is the building lot coverage. On our application, we specified that the maximum allowed is 2890, and we only have 2850. So we thought we would be fully compliant, and we also included information saying we will be fully compliant. Now, I guess there is a discrepancy in the graphic calculations, but we're happy to do whatever it takes to confirm that we are not exceeding the allowable. So I think that will take care of that issue. Next slide. 2 is the same idea. It's impervious surface coverage, but it's the same situation.
I'm sorry, could you go back and explain how you calculated that different from staff? Or did you change your
The computer,
structure?
the computer calculates the area, and we submitted drawings with dimensions, and we offered to submit a digital file with the actual, you know, geometric coordinates so that it can be calculated. I mean, part of the problem, I think, was just that the submittal that we submitted was graphically calculated the area. So, but the point is, I think the ultimate point here is that we will not exceed the allowable in both categories. So I think we can work it out. Michael and I'm sure we can work it out. We will not exceed. So to us, it's a non-issue.
Well, no, I don't want to go past this because I just want to make
Okay.
sure I understand how your computer's calculating that. different from staff's calculations. So if you could just, I mean, I don't want to sound like a fourth grade math teacher, but if you could show me your math, that would kind of help. Because
That's
these
what
are two really important ones here.
We offered to share the digital file, which would have the actual perfect coordinates that generated this number. So I'm happy to share that digital file, but we also shared a file with all of the dimensions listed. So there's a
No,
little,
I guess I'm trying to, I understand what you're saying. You have calculated a certain way. So talk through what portions. It sounds like there's a different numerator and a different denominator. So tell me what your denominator is and how you got there, and tell me what your numerator is and how you got there.
I think you have to ask Michael, because he calculated the number that exceeds. We calculated the number that he calculated the number that exceeded it. So we'd have to look at his.
Well, I'll ask him in a second, but we'll start. I want to hear how you got to your number.
May I share my screen? I could show you the file that shows all the dimensions. I mean, that seems to be the logical way to handle this.
So why don't you show me how you got to your math here? That would be helpful.
And while you find that, let me just say that generally speaking, we don't allow people to do their own interpretations of the calculations, because everybody would magically comply if they could calculate it however they feel. So we rely on the staff, which provide a consistent calculation. So to just be dismissive and say, well, of course we're going to comply, we need to see the proof that you're going to comply.
I apologize.
You have to convince Michael
Right.
that you're going to comply.
Right. I apologize, and I certainly do not mean to be dismissive in any way, shape, or form. I started this by saying we appreciate your work and we know that this is important. Okay. This is the drawing that we submit. We are happy to supply a full-size drawing that's perfectly legible with all of the dimensions on it. We've provided previous full-size drawings that have gone missing, so I apologize about that, but we are perfectly happy to send you a full-size drawing showing all of the dimensions.
And just for a little bit of background, what he's talking about, we submitted two different physical packets to the office 5 or 6 months ago. I think, Joe, that's what you're referring to, and you said it was missing.
But I mean, we'd be happy to share. I mean, we can easily have.
Can you? I don't even know what I'm sorry. I don't even know what I'm looking at right now. This is not helping me understand how you got to your base number. So
all these dimensions are documenting the area, the sides of all of the rectangles that cumulatively form the area of coverage.
So are you calculating where the building sits in the ground, or are you also calculating any kind of roof overhang? What are those lines?
We're calculating all the roof overhangs. That's what this, we have different, the blue is one thing, the orange is another thing, the purple is another thing. It's all documented. Lot coverage is blue, the roofed area is orange, and the impervious surface area is purple.
It appears that you're not calculating the roof coverage as part of the lot coverage.
No, well, for example, that's a good point. So at this corner here, I will zoom in, this corner in the upper right here, it's true, the blue area is smaller than the orange area, but that is a roof overhang. And there's an exception that allows a roof overhang if there's permeable ground below. You do not need to count it. And I don't think Michael has an issue with that, as far as I know.
Michael, could you chime in and help here?
Sure, I'll try and chime in. To be perfectly honest, it's a very difficult plan to sort through. It's not clear to me that, so I'm guessing the blue outline is supposed to be the foundation of the building. And so therefore that's building lot coverage. However, as Laura pointed out, that there are roofed areas that cover hardscape or deck space, which is not shown on your plan, which is what I included in building lot coverage. For example, just south of where you're showing this little bicycle area to the far east end of the building, you have an overhang that extends over a walk.
Correct.
That counts as building lot coverage, which I do not think is in your number. Your plan shows a covered porch that's 288 square feet. That I don't think is covered in your number. That's in the courtyard area.
It's not this is all open to above. It's not covered. It's a,
Well, it's not clear. It
It's a
says
porch.
porch. It says porch. So a porch to me means there's a roof over it. And I've asked several times for clarification and haven't gotten it. So
I
included that as roofed area.
Well, I think, again, we are not seeking a lot coverage or impervious surface area coverage. I am happy to work with Michael and go over all of the little tiny details that are needed to go over to make sure this is 100% fully compliant. Again, I'm not being dismissive. I'm happy to work with Michael. I did not know that there of course, there might be some errors in our calculations. And I think I have to go back and check the code. I know this area to the east of the bicycle room is an allowable exception. It is possible that this area to the south of the bicycle room needs to be included. And if so, we are happy to include it and we will adjust the areas so that they comply. So I apologize that this issue is as difficult as it is, but
Well, I
part of
think
the
there are
challenge.
there are a number of dimensions that just looking at this, if this is what you submitted, there aren't there. Like if you look in the dead center of your screen where you have a building that juts out 2.25 feet in the north-south direction, in the east-west direction, there's no dimension. So I don't even know how we would calculate that.
Well,
Similarly, as you go up 6.53 feet in the northwest corner of your screen. Oh, I guess
I
you
think-
do have that. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I think
it's
they're very difficult to calculate.
it's certainly true that I can add more dimensions. And like I say, I'm happy to work with Michael to validate that we are 100% compliant. I don't know
There's
what else I
no-
can say.
There's not really a whole lot of point in proceeding right now, because whether or not you are seeking this variation, by the staff calculation, you have this variation and the staff is considering it. So until this situation is resolved, I'm not sure that we can really continue this discussion. Personally, because our city has a very serious climate action resiliency plan, very concerned with flooding that happens during rainstorms, lot impervious surface coverage are non-starters on a new construction like this. So I can't really, I mean, I could tell you if you want to continue, I'm going to vote no, because I've not seen proof that your building is complying with what are very serious considerations for staff.
May I make one last comment?
Of course.
Back in August, when I first contacted the zoning department, they told me that a lot coverage and impervious surface area are are frowned upon. I'll just say it that way. Since then, we have never been interested in approaching that topic, okay? Clearly, there is a problem, okay? I will commit to you to resolve it this week with Michael. Because we can't have this hanging over our heads. Michael and I can work this out by Friday. So I do not want this to hold anything up.
Yeah, can I ask? I thought like the goal of today was for us to ask and get approval for variations, but again, we're not asking for this variation.
Well,
I
whether
understand
or
that you're
not
not
you're-
asking, hold on, Laura, hold on one second. I understand you're not asking for it, but in our staff's calculations, and as I explained to you in email, we have to be consistent. So just because an architect has said, we're not seeking this, our calculations sometimes tell us other things. So I suspect most developers and most people building wouldn't want to seek any variances, but the nature of what is in front of us says otherwise. So what I'm going to suggest is that we acknowledge that right now, based on staff calculations, these two variances exist. If that comes to pass, I know you're going to travel onto the Land Use Commission, and I'd like to keep you on track for that. If you can resolve that to staff satisfaction through drawings that depict that, then we will certainly note that in the materials that go to the Land Use Commission, and in our information to them, direct them that is the case, that is not a variance that staff sees. But at this moment, based on Michael and Melissa's professional review of this, they do this all the time, all day long for many, many years. This exists. So we're going to have to agree to disagree. And I'm going to back my staff that this exists right now based on the information that has been provided. If you provide different information that changes that situation, that is the case. We will move forward with that. So why don't you go through the other variances that you have, and we'll go forward with the other comments.
Yeah. May I ask one more question? Michael, when you did the calculations, if you could please send me any discrepancies with overhangs that you noticed that I should pay attention to. If you could just drop me an email with specific areas to focus on, I will be happy to clarify any issues that exist there.
Well, I have done that several times already.
Can
both
just
zoning analysis, the most recent zoning analysis shows the various areas that I calculated and included in building lot coverage and impervious. I labeled them and I gave you my dimensions. So I would use that.
Okay, how about this? I will use that, but if I have any questions, may I contact you?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I think we can go back to Patrick's slides now.
It should be up, Joe.
Okay. So I think the third item is a 1.5 foot north interior setback line where 5 foot is required. Our objective here is just to improve and maintain the alley space. The fence is 4 inches from the alley property line. We didn't want to put a compost garden on the south side near the neighbors. It seems more appropriate near the north, which is also near here. It helps us move the house away from the neighbors to the south. And the existing ADUs, and as you can see on this image, the small garage behind that car right in the center of the image, some of the eaves are underneath the power lines. We are not going anywhere near that close to the property line. But we would like to create, as one of the city planners mentioned previously, we would like to create a similar setback, a variation in setback, so that it's not one long wall at 5 foot or 3 foot or 2 foot or whatever. We don't want to have one long wall. We'd like to have some in and out, which keeps the alley configuration nice. And this is so the smallest setback is 1.5 feet at the dining room space, and there's no windows on that side. It's clearly an alley, but it faces a garden to the west. So this helps the overall building scheme fit on this site. It's similar at the bicycle room and at the garage, but those setbacks are again different. It's not a continuous line. So that's this issue. The garage eave. This is a comment about an eave setback. We have an eave over the garage. It is my understanding that these are allowable obstructions. As an architectural element, there's a limit to them, but this is truly an architectural element that just, all these other garages have eaves. We're adding an eave. So we don't want it to, nothing is going past the property line. Nothing's going to be an obstruction in the alley. So this is an interesting one because this picture shows the existing garage, and this corner right in the center of the image is closest to the sidewalk. And we don't want to move that corner. We just want to increase the depth of the garage so that a car can fit in there and people can walk by it. So we would like to increase the garage towards the alley, but it's triggering, if one considers this a west rear yard, then it triggers a 17'4" setback where 30 foot is required, which this idea that a 30-foot setback is required for a garage obviously is contradicted by all the garages on the alley, but nonetheless, that's how this has been portrayed. So, so this is this is the alley side of an extended garage. Along the right face here, where you see the house behind, is where we would like to add a new side entrance. And we would like to put we would like to just extend the garage roof so that we have a little canopy over the entrance. And that's what this setback is regarding. This is the bicycle room. So this issue is cited because the zoning department is counting things as accessory, a detached accessory structure. We put the code here. It says an accessory structure attached to a principal building in a substantial manner by a wall or a roof shall be considered part of the principal building. And so we are considering both the bicycle room and the fireplace as part of the principal building because they are attached by a wall. The bicycle room setback, the setback has a 2-foot setback. We do not think it's a detached. We're calling it an attached. It's one single structure. It's the one single structure. This is the Patrick and Sarah wanted a courtyard house. And so that's why it's one single structure with walls. So, so again, it's the code says wall or roof. We get cited that connecting it just by a wall doesn't count, but the code says otherwise. So we're not sure what to do with this one.
So again, I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at page 28 of the packet where you're drawing. You have a drawing, and I think what you're indicating is that there is a walkway between the main house and the bicycle storage thing, and you have a wall between them. But I'm really struggling to look at your renderings and understand what I'm looking at. So how high is that wall that's between them?
So there's the wall, there's a staircase that connects the bicycle room to the basically library and office above. So all of this is connected. There's a foundation that's fully connected. The bicycle room, there's a wall facing the alley because we want the privacy from the alley. We are trying, part of the setbacks, the varying setbacks, is there's a really valuable elm tree right there. So we're trying to move, that's why we're keeping the existing corner of the building where it's at. We don't want to disturb the tree roots. And we're trying to move the staircase as far to the south as we can so that we don't interfere with the tree roots. And so some of this undulating alley facade comes into play because of the tree, etc.
So you have an open air staircase
Correct.
that goes from the house down to the bicycle room.
And to the basement. It's a fire exit from the basement. It's the second exit from the basement. So that we have, I mean, our basement then will have exits on opposite corners.
So I guess I also am, I mean, it seems like I've seen people who have open air staircases in their houses. I've never once considered that to be an interior space to the house if it's open air.
We're not claiming that it's interior. We're claiming that, as the code states, it is attached in a substantial manner with a wall. And technically, because it's a 2-story staircase, you know, obviously the lower staircase has a staircase above it. So you could call that a roof if we wanted to waterproof it.
And again, we are trying to block off the alley
Exactly.
We're not
That's
looking
the
at the
whole
alley.
intent here.
and the garbage cans.
But that's different with the argument that you're making right now. The argument you're making right now is that the bicycle room is not an attached structure. But just by virtue of the way the house is laid out, it feels like it very much is a detached structure because it's not included as part of the enclosed main house.
I'm just reading the code. The code says connected in a substantial manner by a wall. And that's what it's connected by. I'm not arguing interior, exterior. I'm not arguing anything. I'm just reading the code and complying with it.
Okay, thank you.
Number 9, again, this is an eave. It's just, it's an eave above the alley door into the bicycle room. It's an architectural element. Most houses have eaves. My understanding is, as you can see in other factor D, according to a certain section of the code, roof eaves are acceptable as obstructions. Now, maybe I'm misinterpreting it. That's possible. But again, I don't think we're asking for anything too difficult here. But it, you know, and then the maximum height of the chimney, 10. We could keep it to 20 feet, even though that has to do with a detached accessory structure. We are stating that it is attached in a substantial manner by a wall, but even still, we will keep the height to 20 feet. So I think this issue has gone away because it will remain 20 feet. It will not go above 20 feet. So this is an interesting one on number 11. At the southeast corner where the cul-de-sac is, we are cited for a fence in the front yard. And what's interesting is you could see in this photograph that the neighbors have a air conditioning condensing unit, which is what the fence is trying to hide. And I don't think AC condenser units are allowed in the front yard either, but again, just the particular and unusual characteristics here. Obviously, you could see in this picture that looks like it's in their side yard, but the way the zoning law is strictly interpreting our project, they're saying putting a fence to hide that would be in our front yard. So we think the fence is a nice, provides a gentle separation with landscaping. That's all we're trying to do. And then number 12. So on this one, just
Wait,
quickly.
so if we go back to the other one, you're saying the front yard is off Poplar, so it doesn't matter what's facing the cul-de-sac? Is that?
No, if Patrick, if you want to go back to slide 10. What we're saying is that in the past and in the future, can you go to, slide 10, I'm sorry.
You know, I can't see slide every time when I'm there.
This one. Whoop. Forward. There we go. No. Next one. Next slide. There you go. Okay. What we're saying is that if you look at the site, in the past 50 or 60 years, I guess it's 60 years, whatever it is, the house has had a rear yard where the people drive into the garage from the alley. Commonly, a rear yard is where people drive off the alley into their garage, is where the yellow line is indicating. That's how it's been for 60 years. The front yard is where the green lines are.
Okay.
But what's
so
interesting,
we need to make your answers shorter to these questions. So you're considering the front yard to be bordering Colfax Terrace. Where does the staff consider the front yard to be?
Let's ask the zoning administrator.
Michael, where do you consider the front?
No, Melissa Klotz is our zoning administrator.
Melissa, where do you consider the front yard to be?
Per the zoning ordinance, the front yard is considered Colfax Terrace. It does not matter if it's a public or private street. This is a unique lot in that it's a through lot and has 2 street frontages. And because the other houses on the block use Poplar as their rear yard, the zoning ordinance specifically says that that second street frontage is considered the rear lot line.
Okay.
I would like to point out that while the neighbors to the south do have Poplar as a rear yard, they also have portions of their home that are relatively 6 feet from the sidewalk. So they have portions of their attached homes. In addition to the garage, they have the garage as well as portions of their home within, let's say, 7 or 8 feet of their property line. So all of the homes to the south are also have attached structures. Their garage is attached, and the home is within that setback. Now, we got cited for that 17-foot setback because our home is within a 30-foot setback, but all of the other homes to the south also have their home within that 30-foot rear yard setback. And more importantly, is that the neighbor to the north has a side yard on Poplar. And that's what we're trying to show here, that our property is more like the neighbor to the north than to the neighbor to the south, because the neighbor to the north has an alley frontage, the neighbors to the south do not.
Okay, shorter answers though.
The
I don't
neighbor
mean to cut you
may I
off.
finish?
If you finish quickly.
The neighbors to the south have a curb cut, which the city engineer knows about, whereas we do not have a curb cut on Poplar Avenue, nor does the neighbor to the north. So what we're saying here is that it is this peculiar lot is more similar to the north neighbor than to the south neighbor in that respect.
Great. Okay, so what does that have to do with the air conditioning unit, which is what you were just talking about?
So the air condition, so where the green line, the south green line here and the south red line, the south red line is the side yard to our southern neighbor. But the green yard is really kind of the front yard in this odd configuration. And we would like to put a fence near the sidewalk where the green yard intersects the green line intersects the red line. We would like to put a small 3-foot high fence that just shields that air conditioning unit that, according to the thing, is in the neighbor's side yard, but it ends up being adjacent to our front yard. So it's just a 3-foot high, screen fencing. It's just, again, I'm just pointing, it's a peculiar site. We have the situation, the neighbor has an AC unit. We just want to screen it. That's all it is.
Peculiar site. Got it. You said that. Let's go on.
So here you see the freestanding fence. We've lowered it. We bring it out to the sidewalk where the people are walking in this image. And then we have a wall that's connected to the house that connects to the fireplace. And we have a 20-foot high chimney. So, and then the height, we were cited for a 7'3" fence height. We all of our drawings indicate that as a wall, as an attached structure. And if it was a fence, yes, it would be limited to 6 feet, number one. But in addition, this wall is actually set back from the property line so that it's within our setback. It's truly a portion of the building. It's not in the setback. It's not like a fence that's close to the property line. It's a wall. And the 7'3", we did this drawing to indicate why it's 7'3". It's not arbitrary. We want to have it just high enough so that when people are standing on our front porch, that they're not looking into the neighbor's windows. So the 7'3" dimension is just about at eye height when you're standing so that you're not looking into the neighbor's windows. So privacy is very important in communities, and that is what the zoning code tries to address. And so we're trying to, again, we think this will increase the well-being of our neighbors. And of course, we do have their approval that they like this. So I think that's all 12 items. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, before I take staff comments, I'd like Melissa or Michael to weigh in. We often have minor variances, major variances. There's some that make sense. I can think of one a year ago where somebody had, an example is they had an architectural element that was going to push them into some additional zoning variances, and we advised them against doing that, and it made their life a little bit easier. So I think I'd like to hear from staff on sort of where are things that in our opinion we think that could be flexible, and other things that maybe need to be reworked before land use commission. So Melissa.
Sure, thank you. I do want to say that this is a peculiar lot, and it is appropriate for certain variations. I do not believe it's appropriate for all of the variations though. So first off, with the building lot coverage, I know that we're kind of at an impasse at the moment. Whatever the final calculation or recalculation comes out to be, a variation should not be granted. The property is more than the minimum lot size required for the district, so it should be able to comply. For the impervious surface, I know Public Works is going to disagree with me on this one, but I do think that that's an appropriate variation. That variation is specifically triggered because of the private street that's on the property. If you were to take that private street out, then the rest of the lot does comply with impervious. The 1.5 foot north interior side yard setback where 5 feet is required, that's where the house varies in the distance from the alley. That one is not appropriate as shown. It would be appropriate at the garage so that the garage can be extended to a larger size that's more usable. But for the other structures that would essentially be new and encroaching into that setback, that one is not appropriate.
Sorry, Melissa, did you say the 1.5 foot north interior side yard setback?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
At the garage, it's appropriate where it's showing it shows a 5.3 foot setback. So that one actually complies at that part. So
correct. We were not
other
asking
portions, those are what are not
right.
appropriate. Moving on, the 3.3 foot north interior side yard setback for the roof overhang, same thing. So we do allow roof overhangs. If you're within your building envelope, they can be as large as you want, but they count towards building lot coverage. Once you are at a setback, the zoning ordinance says that you can encroach 6 inches into that. So my recommendation would be reduce those eaves down to 6 inches, and that takes that variation away. There's not really a need to have more than a 6-inch eave. The 17.4 foot west rear yard setback where 30 feet is required. Again, that is for the garage extension. That is completely appropriate. That part should be allowed. But then looking at I think it's a roof overhang that's also at that rear yard. That part, while it doesn't get as close to the property line as the existing garage does, that's still within the setback. And while it's not the end of the world, I don't know that it's appropriate since there is so much other buildable area on the lot. The 10.5 foot west rear yard setback where 27 feet is required for a yard obstruction. That is for the roofed walk. I believe that is for where it connects to the bicycle area. Which again, we've gone back and forth with not being able to tell if it's really attached or not. I think I'm confusing myself even now. I don't think that's for the bicycle area. That must be, that is the overhang that I just mentioned on the west side. Apologies. Moving on, the detached accessory structures in the front yard where accessory structures are only permitted in side and rear yards. This is a code interpretation. The code says that if things are substantially attached by a wall, then they're not accessory structures. They're part of the principal structure. I do not feel that one wall that is 7.3 feet tall is a substantial connection to where it truly is part of the principal structure. That was discussed with the applicant, and there's an opportunity to appeal if you disagree with that. However, an appeal has not been filed, so my interpretation is that is an accessory structure there, and therefore not permitted and not appropriate.
May I ask a question about that?
Sure.
In our slides, we had suggested one way to resolve that would be to put a metal cap on the wall called a roof. That way it would have a roof and it would be a wall.
You can do that. That will add to your building lot coverage.
Correct. We've included the wall in our building lot coverage, but if we add a roof to that wall, even if it's just, has an overhang of 1 inch, an eave of 1 inch, then we would have a roof and a wall.
I would say that does not meet the intent of the regulation. I would not.
I think the
But
intent of the regulation is
simultaneously-
that these are attached. Attached means it isn't just that you can walk from one to the other. If I put a roof, my garage that is detached from my home, if I created a little tunnel to there, I don't think that is considered attached. That's like I just put a roofed walkway. So I think my understanding also is that if you consider this part of the principal structure, there is still some setback issues for front yard. So that triggers a different variance. Is that correct, Melissa?
That would be correct for the bicycle area,
Right.
if we wanted to call that part of the principal structure.
Right.
To
Well,
wrap
I'm
up,
gonna put that in the, we're at an impasse on that item as well.
to wrap up the last few variations requested, a 2 foot north yard setback where 3 feet is required for a detached accessory structure. That is regarding the bicycle storage building. And as a detached accessory structure in the front yard, that is not appropriate, and within the setback, that is not appropriate. A 1 foot north interior side yard setback where 2.5 feet is required for the roof overhang on the bicycle storage. Same thing, just shrink your eave, and then that part would be okay. The height for the detached accessory structures, that was largely regarding the chimney. I'm glad to see that has come down to 20 feet. That does remove that variation. The fence in the front yard, if you're talking about the fence along the alley, then I completely agree with you that that's an appropriate variation and should be requested. If you're talking about going higher than 6 feet or fencing in the front yard along that south interior yard, I don't think that's appropriate. And then, and the last one was that 7.3 foot fence height. So also our fence regulations, we don't allow fences in front yards unless by variation. But generally speaking, I'm gonna say when not abutting an alley, we don't approve them at over 4 feet in height either. So altogether, some of the variations are appropriate, many are not, and don't need a lot to be tweaked to get it to compliance, but as proposed, I am not supportive of this project.
Can you, Patrick, could you go back to slide 10 with the yards? Melissa, if we know that this is how this property has operated for the last 60 years. And I guess I do not understand why we cannot interpret the west property line along Poplar as a side yard, which is perfectly appropriate in such an odd situation.
The zoning ordinance specifically notes that this is a through lot with 2 frontages.
But it doesn't reference this particular site. In general, it says if you have a through lot, but this technically is not a through lot because the alley doesn't connect to Colfax Terrace. It's a cul-de-sac. We have a side yard at that north, the north portion of the east property line is truly abutting the neighbor's property. There's no road there whatsoever.
Colfax Terrace is considered the roads. The zoning ordinance does not care that that's a private street. So I understand what you're saying. I am going by what the zoning ordinance says, and I cannot call one portion of that alley property line the rear yard.
Well, but can't you then call the whole portion the rear yard? I mean, what we're after is getting the Poplar Street yard a side yard because there's no curb cut on it. Like the adjacent properties to the south.
I'm sorry, that's not what the zoning ordinance says. Again, you're welcome to appeal me, but I'm going by the code.
I guess I don't understand your interpretation. If you could write something up and let us know.
I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to jump in here. I think there's some other staff comments. So we've made some notes. I think what makes sense at this point is to take some other staff comments and feedback. And I think we'll move this on to the Land Use Commission with a neutral recommendation. And you can take the feedback from staff so we can keep you guys on your timeline. And then you can work with staff to try to resolve. It sounds like from what I can tell, there's at least 3 or 4 of these variances that could be removed. And then maybe that makes this a little bit easier. And if you can resolve some of the other ones, it further reduces
okay.
next steps.
I
So
apologize. I need to leave.
Go ahead, Joe. I got it.
okay, so I'm going to take any other staff comments or questions or concerns at this point.
I'll go ahead and just state, I don't like the way that the owner architect is holding the design to the letter of the code on things like this wall attaching an accessory structure, whether it's detached or attached, but wants a generous interpretation of the spirit of the code on other things. It seems very like trying to bend the rules to this specific property. And I do not consider that the impervious surface and the building lot coverage need to be a variance on what is a very unusually shaped structure that is primarily new construction. So I would not be able to support this. And I also similarly, just as a resident, think that having fence heights that are greater than 6 feet is not really appropriate. I mean, Evanston is a city that wants to have more open views in general, and fences are allowed. But the rest of Evanston lives with 6 feet. So calling something a wall and then saying, well, it can be whatever height, I feel like when it's acting as a fence seems really inappropriate also.
By the way, just for you guys know, we agree with you on fence heights, other than the alley, which I think that's the one thing for us, because again, it's an alley, but yeah.
No other community members are allowed an exception just because it's bordering an alley. The fence height rule is the fence height rule. So that's all I'm going to say. I've said all my other comments previously.
All right, any other staff with comments? It is, just be mindful, it is past 3. We've been on this for an hour, and we have other items on the agenda. So if there are things that need to be verbalized, great. Otherwise,
is there an opportunity for public comment?
Sure, we can take some comment. I just want to this is staff's time too, so I just want to make sure I get staff's comments as well. So any other staff comments?
I do. I have one comment just to think about as you move forward. It doesn't look like there's any building plans that have been submitted for review or anything yet, but I want to make sure that you guys understand that if you're demolishing more than 50% of the structure in order to make a new structure, whether we call it an addition or new building, if it's demolishing more than 50%, you're going to fall under the affordable housing tax, and you're also going to likely be required to sprinkle the building. So I just want to make sure you keep that in mind as you prepare plans to move the project forward.
Thank you. Affordable housing tax, and with do what was the second thing?
Sprinkle the building.
Ah, gotcha.
All right, any other staff
Real
comments?
quick, I generally agree with what my colleague said. It's especially the planners with regards to some of these requested variations being appropriate and some of them not being appropriate. Also don't really agree with the interpretation of the lot lines is on the screen currently. Also keeping in mind when we're moving forward to the land use commission, it seems like the porch deck, whatever it is pretty much a done deal. It needs to be extremely clearly stated on the plans, because in looking through the plans, it's stated as to be determined in some cases. It's not on other pages. It's included, and there seemed to be a significant amount of discussion about it actually being a part of the plan. So wherever possible, make the plans as clear as possible, because I think that's where a lot of this confusion is coming from. There are things that are not consistent throughout the plans and the elevations that are stated.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to find those 2 packets that were dropped off that have the fulsome plans, or we'll drop off a 3rd packet with that.
We just said we accept plans digitally at this time. That's how we review all plans at this point in time.
Gotcha.
So, I don't, we would have received a paper copy, it would have been routed, and we would have asked you for a digital copy either way. All right, any other staff comments? And then I want to take any public comments that are available that want to be provided. All right, Mr. Stevens, you have a few minutes.
Yes, my name is Robert Stevens, and I am the resident at 2346 Colfax Terrace, which is the property immediately to the south of our new neighbors. And I want to say that we are really excited about the prospect of this project. This is a site, and this is a house that has not been lived in for 20 years and has been minimally maintained, and is not quite a blight on the neighborhood, but close to it. And to have these folks come in, the Hillmans come in with this, which to us is a very exciting and very doable plan, and become responsible neighbors as we have found them to be, is a delight. And I just want to, as probably the most significantly impacted neighbor in this affair, I just want to put in my good word. Also, I have spoken to other neighbors around, some of whom are on the north side of the alley, and others who are in the cul-de-sac, all of them, without exception, are enthusiastic about this prospect. But I want to say that we are puzzled that none of us have gotten any notification of any of these hearings. And we thought that it was pro forma to receive notification of hearings of this kind of change. Am I correct in that assumption, or am I misunderstanding something?
You should be receiving the public notice for the Land Use Commission hearing in the mail any day now.
Okay, but nothing, those have come, but nothing about these meetings has come.
This is effectively an open staff meeting. It's not a meeting. We're not a determining body the way the Land Use Commission is. So most communities don't do this. You don't come up, the public isn't at an open staff meeting. So
well, anyhow, just want to put my good word in and hear from an immediate neighbor, someone who's who would be significantly affected. The neighbor to the south that has the air conditioning on his side wall, which, by the way, Patrick, I will be happy to screen on my side. Since it's a side yard for me, I can screen it.
You don't have to do that, Bob.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments before we move this forward?
I want to say this one last thing and then I'll quit. I would really like to ask you all to go and look at this property. It is really a squirrely space. The whole cul-de-sac is. And we got into all kind of sideways trouble trying to put a fence on a back patio, which the city insisted on calling our front yard. You know, it's just a really strange area. So take a look at it and see what kind of creative stuff is being done here, because it really is neat. Thank you.
All right, any other staff comments? All right, I am going to make a neutral recommendation to the Land Use Commission for this matter. And I'm not going to read out all the variances at this time because I want to keep moving.
I will second it.
Okay, Michael Griffith, please call the roll.
Nyden,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Callahan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hank,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
I'm a little conflicted here. I feel like a stronger recommendation should be made to the Land Use Commission, but I'll go ahead and vote aye for the neutral. Motion carries.
Thank you, folks.
Hey, Laura, could you take over for a minute?
Sure. 1 second while I pull up the agenda. Our next item is an item of new business, 1590 Sherman Avenue. Wyton Architects submits for an administrative review use for a type 2 restaurant, Milk Tea in the D3 Downtown Core Development District. This item is for recommendation to the zoning administrator. Mr. Tan, are you available to talk about your project?
Hello, this is Kevin Gao. I'm the owner, the architect. It's not here today.
Oh, that's fine. I know we are running fairly late. If you'd like to just briefly explain what you're going to be doing with the business, just a little bit, that would be great.
Okay. Yes, the business is a bubble tea shop. That's 2 in Evanston already. What we mainly do is bubble tea and smoothie, more like a coffee shop. We don't have any grease. We don't have any grease in the business. All tea will be brewed in their tea and boba will be brewed in their in-house. That's the only thing we brew in-house, and that's the only thing we serve. We might serve some dessert or pastry, but it will be purchased from the third party. What we have to add to the current building is the plumbing. We will add the grease trap in there, even though we don't grease any grease. Then the only concern might be because the grease is we use a lot of dairy product. and we do have their grease shop there. And then we don't provide employee to for the parkings. All the recycles, we will have recycle bins and garbage bins in the building. No, back of the building. It's a condominium building, so we will get their garbage to the back. Delivery we will have to schedule with the supplier to deliver. It usually come in once a month because we use a lot fresh food. So we will have to get it from the grocery shop locally. So that's not gonna be much supply. Have a truck in front of their busy road there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gao. Do we have any staff comments or questions? Okay, I have one comment related to composting. I've noticed that you have in your thing that you're planning on using composting to-go containers. However, although it is not a requirement, we recommend that any of our restaurants do in-house or do a commercial composting service for food waste.
Yes, we've seen the opportunity to do that. So it's franchised. We have to talk with the franchisee in company, see if they do provide their containers like that. Otherwise, we can help with that. Like I know some other company, they use the paper straws, composing containers. Since we serve it, the beverage there, personal experience, paper straw and the composing container is not the best choice for drinks if you sit there for a long time. So we do see looking out for the opportunity to use that, but at this point we are not able to satisfy for that.
Understood. Any other staff comments or questions? Okay, then I'll accept a motion. Okay, I will make a motion for approval in accordance and contingent upon the zoning administrator's recommendations as listed in the staff memo. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Could you please call the roll?
Schnur,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Callahan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hank,
Aye.
Pratt,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Griffith, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. I see our fearless leader is returned, I think. So Johanna, do you want to take over again?
Oh, thanks, Laura. Okay. Next item, 2002 Central Street, recommendation to zoning administrator, April Doremus, operator submits for an administrative reviews for a type 2 restaurant blended in the B1 district of the Central Street corridor overlay. Any comments on overview for this from the applicant?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just so into what you guys are doing with zoning. I'm so excited to be here. So this will be our second establishment. We have one currently open in Glenview that I'm hanging out in. We do fresh pressed juices, smoothies, acai bowls. We have a cool waffle bowl concept where we make homemade waffles, but those will be offsite, where we chop them up and top them with fruits and different kind of drizzles. Gluten-free, so the community has been really liking those. And we're just really excited to jump into Evanston. We see a lot of Evanston residents that come out to Glenview. So when we were searching for locations, Central Street just seemed like an amazing fit. And thus far, the community has been really excited and super welcoming. So.
Any staff comments or questions?
Similar to the previous item, I would just recommend that you consider contracting with a composting firm in order to have commercial composting for your food waste.
Okay, I'm happy to look into that. It's not something we do here because our leasing kind of does all the overhang on that, but glad to look into it. We try and be as no waste as possible. So it would fit our concept perfectly.
I have a similar question pertaining to that. Does you have eco-friendly to-go containers? What's your definition of that? Is that compostable or recyclable?
We actually choose the eco-friendly option online, so they are recyclable. I'm not 100% sure if they're compostable.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Laura Biggs, do you want to do a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval of this contingent upon the recommendations by the zoning administrator as listed in the staff memo.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Nyden,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Higgs,
Aye.
Callahan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hike,
Aye.
Pratt,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Griffith, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make
Motion
a
to
motion
adjourn.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. And then do we have a meeting next week? Do we have items next week?
Yes, I believe we have several items next week, a couple more administrative review uses, and I think there might be one other zoning case.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your time today.